Lisa, this is interesting, your Take Back Control Act. Do you normally get inspiration from Dominic Cummings for Labour policies?
I think the inspiration actually comes from people who have consistently in this country voted for change. They've voted for change in referendums, they've voted for change across the board. And what we want to see is the government make good on those promises. Instead, in the budget this week, which should have been a game changer, we saw just 9% of the population granted the power to take charge of their own destiny under new devolution deals. There's a missing 90% there, and Labour is determined that we're going to deliver for those people.
But are you confident that devolution has always been a great success? I mean, look at Scotland. Do the public actually want more power to be devolved to people who perhaps they didn't elect and that weren't elected on a very big turnout? Isn't it just devolving to people who are essentially bureaucrats and not necessarily reflecting their interests?
Look, I think the evidence of the last 13 years shows that when we're unshackled from this failing Tory government, we can do far, far better. And in fact, the evidence goes back further than that. Under the last Labour government, when we granted real power through regional development agencies to places like Grimsby and Rotherham, they developed a world-leading wind industry. They worked in partnership with business to bring advanced manufacturing to Rotherham. I'm standing here in Media City in Salford, where we now have young people from my constituency in Wigan, Salford, Bolton, Bury, driving the jobs in the media that a generation ago would have been completely unthinkable. I think if you hand power back to people, they make good decisions and decisions that last. That's what the government says, but that's what Labour's actually going to do.
But do you think devolution in Scotland has been a success?
I think devolution in Scotland hasn't gone deep enough and close enough to the people. I think it's right that any government in Westminster should respect whoever is elected by the people. Yeah, I'd much prefer it if it was a Labour government in Scotland, but should Labour not win the election in Scotland but win in Westminster, you can rest assured we will work constructively with whoever the Scottish people choose, the Welsh people choose to lead them. But what is more important is that people feel the benefit of that in every part of Scotland. And so often what I hear when I leave Edinburgh and Glasgow to go to places like Fife and many of the coastal towns around Scotland is exactly the same story that I hear in industrial and coastal towns in England as well, that they want power to move much closer to them. It's one of the reasons why we've said they should have the right to have a mayoral model there as well if they want to, because people closer to home understand not just the problems that they face, but the assets and potential that exist in every part of Britain that could be unlocked and used for the public good if we were only able to see it.
OK, I mean, obviously you're aware, I'm sure you hear it on the doorstep, that immigration is a key concern. Do you agree with Keir Starmer when he said there is, quotes, a racist undercurrent, end quotes, which permeates all immigration law? Is all immigration law racist?
No, of course all immigration law isn't racist. And in fact, I used to work with refugees and asylum seekers before I came into politics. Well, I don't know what you're referring to, but I'm pretty sure that Keir Starmer does not think that all immigration law is racist. Well, look, I don't know what that piece was or what the context was for it, but I can assure your viewers that we do not believe, Keir Starmer does not believe, and I do not believe that immigration law is racist. What we want to see is an immigration system that actually works, less of the PR stunts, less of the press releases, and more of the hard yards that it takes to stop the boat crossings, break the smuggler gangs, and get our asylum system up and running again so that it can process people swiftly, grant asylum to people who have the right to be here, and remove people swiftly who don't.
So do you support the Rwanda plan then? Because that's seemingly using a sledgehammer perhaps to crack a nut when it comes to immigration.
Well, we think it's absurd. The Home Secretary has handed over £140 million in cheques to Rwanda and so far has nothing to show for it. This was a plan that was announced and pushed by her predecessor, Priti Patel. They've announced and re-announced it. And today what we've got is an Instagram account rather than a workable policy. We think you should take that money, put it into the National Crime Agency, create a cross-border cell that disrupts the criminal gangs gangs and send the clearest possible message to those criminal gangs that their behaviour won't be tolerated and that will bring them to account should they persist. Instead, we've had more and more of the tough talk from this government, and last year the boat crossings hit a record high of 45,000. It's not working, and it's about time the government recognised that.
But what is Labour's plan to bring down not just illegal immigration, but legal immigration? We heard from the OBR in the week after the budget that it predicts that net migration will be 250,000 in the coming years. In 1997, before Tony Blair took office, it was 47,000. I would imagine that the constituents in Wigan that you speak to on a regular basis are concerned about these numbers.
Yeah, you know, during the EU referendum, one of my constituents said to me, it's all very well people saying that we should be grateful to people who work in our local hospital, who've come from all over the world to do so, and we are. But she said my kids could just as well as think of going to the moon as getting those jobs. And I think she was right, that we've had 13 years in which we've pulled away the ladder for many young people in constituencies like mine. We haven't taken seriously the need to invest in the skills of young people, in the employment and retraining support for older people who are leaving the labour market. We need a long-term plan to actually skill up our workforce for the jobs that we're creating, not just the sticking plaster of continuing to grant visas to people from other countries who could be contributing to their own countries to come here and fill those shortages. That's why we've said devolve skills policy, devolve employment training and support so it can be far more flexible to the local labour market, and give businesses much more flexibility over how they use the apprenticeship levy as well. We think immigration and skills go hand in hand, and immigration is no substitute for investing in the skills of young people in this country.
You've mentioned there older people and encouraging them back into work. I'm a bit confused. Why is Labour saying that it wouldn't agree with Jeremy Hunt's proposal to not have a top threshold on the amount you can put into a pension, when Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, said that was a great idea for doctors? Should it just apply to doctors and not other people who are older, who might need to be enticed back into the workforce?
Well, because 84% of the people that this helps are not doctors. And this is not just a sledgehammer to crack a nut. It's a very expensive sledgehammer to crack a nut. It can't be right, surely.
But do you want to bring doctors back into the NHS?
It can't be right that we spend £1 billion on helping a majority of people with a tax cut who are at the wealthiest end of the spectrum, when 99% of the rest of us are struggling to even put money into our own pensions and stay in work as a consequence. We think there are far, far better ways to use £1 billion, and we would reverse this cut. We would work with the government, if they were willing to do so, on a bespoke scheme, an alternative that ensured that we found a solution to the doctors' problem. There are several of those solutions currently on the table, but instead the government has gone for £1 billion tax cut for the wealthiest people in the country, only a handful of people. And what does it feel like to a paramedic waking up on Wednesday morning to hear that that is the government's priority at a time when everybody is struggling? This is bad policy, this is bad choices. In the end, government is about choices, and this government has not chosen 99% of us this week.